Why, hello there, children of the night, and today for this Sunday I thought I would try something new. Basically, I'm calling this thing Fanfiction Saturdays, where every Saturday I'll react to a narration of a fanfiction that I have never read before in my life, or at least I've heard of before. And today's fanfiction is called "Something Sweet to Bite" by Knackerman. I have heard of this fanfiction mostly through the artist Kevern Kovalevsky. Kevern Koviski. If you don't know who he is, he's basically the guy that did the artwork for the Ask Pigmina Diane Pie Tumblr. And I'm talking about the original Ask Pigmina Tumblr page. So, and from what I know, apparently this is being split into 5 parts. And I'm probably gonna split this into 5 parts as well, because if I were to do this into one video, I think it would be we would be here for hours on end. But anyway, I think let's get part 2 rolling.
Might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Gnome Emogak and Emogak.
A bat fled across the face of a monstrous harvest moon, its leathery wings sweeping through the chill autumn mist, leaving swirls and spirals in its wake. The creature of the night flew back and forth, eating the last bugs of the season. Fat as it was, the bat would need every scrap of weight it could put on before the harsh winter months. Already a few of its fellows had secluded themselves in caves and hollow trees, snug and plump, lost in half-sleep that would last until spring. A moth stirred up from its grass, its gossamer wings, making it a pale ghost in the moonlight. A quick snap of tiny jaws and the mouthful was gobbled down. With a surge of its wings, the bat flew on into the night. As it neared a barn blazing with light, the creature became somewhat curious. Usually at this time of night, the barn would be empty, dark and inviting for one of its kind. Instead, the bat could hear sounds of ponies busily at work inside. It would have flown closer for a better look, but a sudden chill ran down its spine, making it think twice. An instinct that even it barely understood. Screamed loud, clear in the bat's tiny head. Danger! Best to move on and find more prey. Best to find a safe spot and sleep in the deep, dreamless sleep of hibernation. Best to go far, far from here to do it. There is nothing here for a tiny bat. Nothing but death.
What?
Apple Bloom! Called Applejack, putting the last batch of caramel apples on a tray lined with wax paper to cool. Benches set up in the barn lined the walls, half filled with the sugar-coated fruit. Where has that filly gone off to? She muttered to herself. A cauldron, half empty, but for a hissing puddle of sweet brown syrup, cooled over a pile of smoldering coals just outside the barn door. The barn itself was warm and snug, filled with lantern light and sweet scent of sugary treats, quite the contrast to the chilled night outside. Even so, Applejack couldn't help drawing the cool air into her lungs with a satisfied smile as she stepped out to look for her sister. She loved this time of year. Winter would be here soon enough.
Don't we all love this time of year?
Had its own work and worry, just like spring and summer. But the autumn months, after harvest, were a time of relaxation and fun for the Apple family. With the crops in, safe and sound, money would be rolling into Sweet Apple Acres before too long. It was a tradition in their family to share the wealth, and what better way than to provide all kinds of apple-themed treats and games for kiddies at Nightmare Night. Nightmare Night, it was the first holiday to come after the harvest, so the Apple family always did it big. Of course, the holiday had always been more about treats than tricks at Sweet Apple Acres. Every year, Granny Smith would have tubs set up in Ponyville for the townsfolk to bob for apples. She had taken to turning in early and letting Applejack make sure that they stay full and crisp, delicious apples. Even so, Granny Smith was still an important part of the festival. Every year since Big Mac was old enough to plow, he'd offer hay rides for the community as well. Even Apple Bloom seemed to be taking more of an interest in the festivities. Last year, she'd gone around with Pinkie Pie collecting candy with her friends. But this year, she seemed to be really interested in helping Applejack make up a few homemade treats to pass out at the festival in town. Some of the recipes Apple Bloom was trying out seemed a mite odd, but Applejack didn't mind trying new things so long as they were able to finish making their batch of usual treats as well. The only problem was, after helping Applejack spare a few apples and dip them in the bubbling caramel, Apple Bloom seemed to quickly have lost interest and wandered off to do her own thing. Really, Applejack shouldn't have been surprised. Apple Bloom had a habit of getting distracted by the least little thing. They should have been done making treats hours ago, but as it was, she still had about half the apples left to dip. Worse, she was running low on caramel and firewood.
Apple Bloom!
Called Applejack again as she went to the side of the barn where the wood pile was kept to get a few fresh sticks.
Wherever you run off to, get your flank back here, Missy. We got a lot of apples to dip before we store them in the barn to dry, and we're gonna burn through the midnight oil with all your diddly-daddling.
The country pony paused and listened. The fog that curled through the orchard tonight did strange things to the familiar sounds of the farm, muffling noises that Applejack would normally find comforting and amplifying those she couldn't identify. She didn't hear the sounds of tiny hoofs coming her way, nor did she hear her little sister's voice calling out in response. What she thought she heard was giggling. High, girlish giggling.
What was that?
Just on the edge of her hearing. It wasn't something any pony wanted to hear all alone
What?
in the dark night.
What?
Easy, girl. You're just spooking yourself.
Applejack reassured herself under her breath as she quickly piled a few dry branches on her back.
What was
to
that?
dry.
I
She
think that was
really
the
wished
candy
that
mare.
Mrs. Smith didn't go to sleep so early and that Big Macintosh wasn't off in town helping set up for tomorrow's celebration. More than anything, she wished Apple Bloom would stop wandering off on her own. A farm was no place for a young filly to go exploring by herself, especially at night. Applejack had heard too many horror stories of colts playing around on farm equipment and hurting themselves. Perhaps more dreadful.
I've heard
were
too
the
many
stories
stories
of
where
fillies
ponies
falling
go
into old
crazy.
sinkholes or boarded up wells, no pony finding them until months later, if they found them at all. A thought suddenly occurred to Applejack as she headed back towards the front of the barn.
Apple Bloom, you better not be playing a trick on me. It ain't Nightmare Night just yet.
When there was no answer, she tried.
I'll tell Big Macintosh on you.
There was still no answer. At least, no
I think
answer she
Apple
wanted
Bloom's
to
dead. I
acknowledge
think the
was
candy
more
mare
than
ate
her
her.
imagination. As she rounded the side of the barn, a sudden burst of flame whooshed into light, painting the fog bright orange. Applejack jumped back, the firewood she carried on her back scattering at her hooves. She almost bolted there and then, but calmed down when she realized the flames were under the cauldron. Some pony had gotten the fire going again while she'd been back at the woodpile. Had Apple Bloom gone to fetch more wood and she missed her going around the other side of the barn? As Applejack drew closer, she saw whomever had built up the fire had used too much fuel. The flames were licking up the side of the cauldron, bright and hungry. Already she could see that the caramel that had been left in the pot was bubbling up. At this rate, it would burn and blacken, going completely to waste.
Oh, Apple Bloom, sweetie, you can't use this much wood. You need a low heat for this kind of treat.
She went to drag the cauldron out of the fire and save what she could of the caramel, careful to avoid the leaping and flickering flames, but found the old pot wouldn't budge. It was usually only this heavy when it was full, not half empty like it was. Applejack did the best she could, tugging on the cauldron inch by inch away from the barn. But once it was on a patch of damp dirt, she went about kicking sand over what flames she could, trying to tame the wildfire. The flames subdued a bit, so Applejack decided she'd try to get her sister's help to get the cauldron back in place.
Apple Bloom, you in here?
Also, I apologize if I don't speak that much during the the narration. Basically all I want to do. If I speak, I can't really hear what's going on. So, so yeah, I apologize if I'm quiet most of the time. I will say things from time to time.
As Applejack as she cantered into the barn, the lanterns had been blown out. By the light
Morning,
from the
Cass.
fire, Applejack could tell the barn was empty on the inside. Empty, that is, save for a pile of sticky popsicle sticks that used to have caramel apples on the end, sitting boldly on the benches. Even the apples that hadn't even been dipped yet were missing. A tiny voice. Hungry. So That's what was going on.
What was that?
Apple Bloom, I can't believe you. These treats were for tomorrow to share with all the fillies and colts who came looking for sweets to buy. How could you and your friends be so selfish to eat them all before they even had a chance to dry?
Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo had to be in on this. Sweet Apple Acres produce might be good enough that a filly would like to try to eat all.
I think the
bushel
Candy
on
Mare
the
ate
go.
Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle as
One
well.
could have eaten all the apples Applejack had dipped. Even 3 managing it was a stretch, but that was the only logical conclusion she could come to.
Apple Bloom, you get out here, young Missy. You and your friends. Or I swear I'll be writing a letter to Celestia about how I learned to break fillies' rumps with my bare hooves.
Still, there was nothing but silence. Oh, almost. There was that high, girlish giggling again. It sounded like it was coming from the cauldron, but that couldn't be right. It didn't make any sense. How could the girls be?
If that was the case, then how is the Candy Mare able to sit in there without her candy skin melting under the heat?
There was nothing but darkness, mist, and fading moon. The smoke of partially quenched fire burned her eyes as she looked into the big black pot, ready to jump back at the first sign of a trick. She froze, her eyes locked while a sad, shriveled up figure curled into a ball at the bottom of the pot. She was completely covered in bubbling brown sugar, but even so, Applejack could tell right away the tiny figure was her sister. She screamed. Applejack reached into the cauldron with her bare hooves, swirling her limbs on the still hot metal as she closed them around Apple Bloom's unmoving form. The pain of her shearing flesh nothing compared to the agony that tore her heart. How had this happened? Had her sister somehow fallen in? Why hadn't she cried out? Why hadn't she screamed? Applejack ran into the barn where there was a trough of water and quickly dumped Apple Bloom's body into the cold liquid. The caramel was already starting to set. The sticky gunk wouldn't come off. Applejack did the best she could, but a part of her knew that it was already too late. Her sister wasn't breathing. She tried hammering on her tiny chest, put a mouth to her sister's and breathed air into her lungs. It did nothing but leave a sickly sweet taste in her mouth. Pieces of half-dried caramel sticking to her mouth. That was too much for her. She fell back on her haunches, wiping her mouth with her hoof, trying to get rid of the taste. Taste of death and candy. She felt her gorge rise, and tears pricked in the corners of her eyes. Could this have happened? She blamed herself. What kind of horrible sister was she? That's when she heard the laughter again.
Okay, that's okay.
And seemed to echo inside her chest, inside her head. There were words too, in a childish sing-song voice. Applejack got up, backed away, wildly turning her head back and forth, trying to find the source of the song and the horrible mocking laughter.
Where are you?
Where are you?
Who are you? Did you do this? Did you do this to Apple Bloom? What did my sister ever do to deserve this?
Applejack howled, tears of anger and sadness spilling from her eyes. She backed slowly out of the barn, her body, turning around and around. Where was the laughter coming from? She stumbled out into the cool night air, so reeling from what happened to her sister, still haunted by the laughter of children she couldn't see. If she had watched where she was going, she might not have tripped over the well-placed hook. She
Nope,
didn't realize
we don't
she
want-
stumbled into the fire
don't
till
want.
the flames were chasing her.
Me don't want
Tail
any of that.
flickering up into her mane. Panicked beyond all reason, she reared back on her hind legs and fell right into the still cool cauldron. She screamed then, loud enough to wake the dead, as her flesh burst and blistered from the heat and the sticky caramel seeped into her wounds. Everywhere the metal of the pot touched, a layer of her skin stuck, sizzling and smoking as it parted from the rest of her body. Blinded by the smoke of her own burning flesh, the stench choking her even as she fought for more air which to scream. She tried desperately to climb out of the cauldron. The sides, slick with her own blood, slipped beneath her painful fumbling. The giggling rose all around her, the laughter loud and menacing. A face peered out of the smoke. It was huge, its eyes appearing as blood, its teeth sharp and pointed.
Give us something sweet to find.
Sang gleefully as it lunged forward. Applejack felt those sharp teeth close around half of her face. One eye went dark as it popped between her terror-shocked face. Her shriek faded to a gurgle as the monster ripped away part of her face and throat, chewed and swallowed the bloody wad of flesh. With a burst of adrenaline, Applejack managed to scamper out of the cauldron and grab the mirror. She felt something crack as she hit the dirt. But it didn't matter. She just had to run. She had to get away. She couldn't get up properly, but still she dragged herself.
You're still alive.
A bad idea seized her. If she could get to the barn. Just get to the barn and close the door. She could buy herself some time to think. Just think. Tears spilling from her one remaining eye, she labored over the earth. The few feet between the fire and possible safety now seeming miles. Any moment she expected the monster's teeth to find her again. With mild disbelief, Applejack tumbled into the barn and slammed the door behind her. She panted heavily, finding it hard to suck air into lungs while there was a hole in her throat. She started coughing uncontrollably, suffocating on her own blood and terror. Something slammed into the door behind her like a freight train, making her shriek and whimper. The wood splintered as laughter shook her
No.
She stood on her hind legs with her back to the barn door, bracing her front and knotted limbs against the door and the slippery straw covered the floor as best she could. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't handle something like this on her own. She needed help. She needed help right now. She opened her mouth to scream again, this time to yell as loud as she could for help. She felt something suddenly burst between her jaws. It happened as if it was in slow motion. The wooden door blossomed, opening like a rare red flower, all spines and petals gaping wide as if to entice a lover. Shards and shrapnel shred open Applejack's back, sending a shower of scarlet spurting from her that splashed across the barn door in a pattern that looked just like wings. She never had time to register the pain as the thing that caused the hole, something large and cylindrical, was forced clean through her back and up through her ribcage.
I know, right?
She couldn't tell what it was at first, but the taste of dirt on the fence post mixed with her own blood as the sharp end skewered her tongue. She jaw popped loose from the rest of her skull as with another force that shoved, her shattered the door behind her, and the creature began to force its own body through. She felt parts of her she had not felt before burst within her body, as the thick shaft of the wood churned her internal organs to mush. The monster, whatever it was, tore through the barn door like it was tissue paper, a look of triumph on what she could see of its twisted face. She didn't even feel the shards of wood embedded in her back anymore, only the wood that had impaled her. It was almost a relief when her burning lung collapsed, and the rhythm of her heart slowed, stuttering its final beats. The last thing that flickered across her consciousness before she finally died was a figure raising her into the air, smiling, giggling all the while, and taking another bite of the caramel coated apple.
Is that it? No, that's not it. That is so definitely not it.
Why is it so cold, Mummy?
It's been cold like this for the last 3 years, dear Art. You know that. Those Pegasi have been trying to freeze us out, thinking we'd give them more food if they made it hard for us. But we'll show them that earth ponies are made of sterner stuff.
The Pegasi? Are you hopping on about that again, sweetie?
Who else, dear? You said yourself that when you're out playing the field for my brother that you've seen them darting about in the clouds above.
I try to figure out what they're doing. Why the unicorn decided to make it snow and cold all the time. You mark my words. And Pegasus has something off about all of this. It's magic that's in this cloud. The magic was bringing this unnatural cold upon us.
The unicorns make them go away, Daddy. So they can stop being so cold.
They can do
I'm trying to
anything,
listen to the
love.
thing.
Anything at all, then. Why, just a fortnight ago,
I know.
when your uncle went to deliver our kid, I seen one of them Patsy unicorns taking some of our produce and putting into a box of his.
I can't really understand you through your thick accent.
One end wins in strawberries, the other end out But the strange green concoction that was as cold as any snow.
Right, you and your tales. You'll be giving her ideas about those hornets are all powerful next time. Their hooves are in the dirt as much as ours, but they act like they're even higher in the clouds than the Pegasi. Not so different from us earth ponies, that lot. But they always have to be putting on airs. We don't need you spreading their propaganda for us.
It's true. He said he ran some gold sweet shop. Can you stop in with my daughter next time I was in town and you give her a treat?
When you were in town, you mean the city, Daddy? The castle? I've never been. You know how much I've always wanted to go, Daddy. To see the High Lords and Ladies.
Yes, well, your daughter and I will have to have a talk about that. You get on with your chores. Step lively. Brisk work of the limbs will do wonders to keep the chill out your bones.
It was a bright autumnal day, about a week before Nightmare Night would begin. The breeze was crisp and sent leaves dancing and tumbling
Oh, great,
playfully
it's
in the
Diamond
street,
Tiara.
even as the sun still shone merrily. Though it was
I know she's
sad to see
redeemed
summer
and
end,
redeemed
the
and all,
ponies
but
of Equestria
if you haven't
moving
seen Jerry
incessantly
Pete's
all
video
four
on
seasons, so most of the town of
on
Pony
how
wanted the
Diamond
spring
Tiara
in their
developed,
step,
go watch
despite the
it.
chill that hung in the air.
But please go watch it. In my opinion, Jerry Pete is the guy that makes me sit down and take a step back and look at the big picture.
She had to start a week in advance to get it all done in time. This was no chore for Pinkie, though. She loved decorating like this and watching the town transform before her eyes from its usual quaint self to one just a little bit scary, but fun. Since it was afternoon and school had let out, a few of the town's children were helping her spread fake spider webbing around the post office. They had to clear away a few very real cobwebs before they started. Not many ponies visited the post office themselves these days.
This is a waste of time. I don't know why Daddy insists we help with these decorations when no pony is ever going to see them.
Moaned Diamond Tiara.
The only ponies that bother with the post office are practically Nightmare Night decorations themselves.
The pampered filly
Well,
had a pair of nearsighted elderly
when you look at it
fits,
that
and she tried to
way,
figure out how many fits
I can
it
kind of
cost to send
see
the package
where
to
it comes
Baltimore.
from.
Totally.
Agreed Silver Spoon, as usual.
It's a waste of time when their eyesight is so bad they can't even actually see the decorations anyway.
Silver Spoon turned her nose up and walked over to the box of decorations, inspecting them.
Besides, if they did, it might give them a heart attack.
She said with fake concern.
We should really move on somewhere more interesting, like the mall or the bowling alley. And then we could do a little shopping or have some fun. After we finish decorating, of course.
She feigned a look of innocence, knowing from experience that her silver tongue and good looks were the key to getting her way.
Please tell me Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon will get killed by the Candy Mare. I'm like willing it to happen.
Hiding her hooves in the air as if to encompass all of Ponyville.
It wouldn't be the whole town if we only hung spider webs and pumpkin lights in storefronts and shopping malls.
Pinkie Pie bubbled as she went about festooning the quiet post office with black and purple streamers.
Besides, it's way more fun to transform an old, boring post office into someplace exciting than it would be to make an already interesting place more exciting.
She smiled awkwardly as the postmaster gave her a look from behind the counter.
No offense.
Just then, Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo tumbled in front of Pinkie Pie all at once. They were supposed to be spreading the webbing in the rafters, but had somehow managed to get themselves hopelessly tangled up with one another. Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara led the other children in laughter at their misfortune. It didn't take Pinkie long to extract the trio of friends, though she almost got herself just as badly tangled in the process.
What happened? I'm sorry, Pinkie Pie. It was all my fault. Me and my friends got to talking about all the candy we was gonna get come Nightmare Night, and I must have gotten a little distracted.
Apple Bloom grinned sheepishly.
Yeah!
Chimed in Scootaloo.
We had a ball last year going around with you and collecting candy. Even after we left half of it for Nightmare Moon, we still had plenty to share.
Added Sweetie Belle cheerfully.
And I'm sure we'll have lots again this year, even after we leave our tribute. Leave a few blank blanks to still be giving up your candy to Nightmare Moon. Everybody knows it's just Celestia's sister. She's not going to gobble you up if you don't give her some of your candy.
Diamond Tiara explained, rolling her eyes.
We kept all our candy last year.
Added Silver Spoon.
As you can see, we're doing just fine. It was truly amazing, too. You know the neighborhood where I live? They give out full-size candy bars by the hookful. We were still eating Nightmare Night candy at heartwarming.
The spoiled fillies smiled, drinking their peers' jealousy, both real and imagined.
But I'm sure it won't matter if you do decide to leave a few fun-sized treats in the dirt.
Grinned Diamond Tiara in a predatory fashion.
So the big bad princess won't gobble you up.
At that, the pair laughed uproariously. Apple Bloom and her friends just looked at each other. Sometimes Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon's sense of humor just didn't seem all that funny. Even so, Apple Bloom wasn't one to back down from a challenge.
Well, we ain't gonna leave any of our candy then either. In fact, I bet we can collect more candy than you two, even with your fancy full-size candy bars.
Said the fiery-haired filly.
Oh, really? Care to make a bet then? Whoever has the most candy wins. Let's say the losers have to give up all their candy.
Said Silver Spoon, a grin playing at the corner of her mouth.
Why?
On.
Cried Scootaloo.
Now hold on,
Though I
girls.
think you and Silver Spoon will get eaten by the candy bear before you can win this competition.
Nightmare Night tradition.
Said Pinkie Pie.
I mean, sure, it's tempting to hold on to all those gummy bears, and candy apples, and candy bars, and pixie sticks, and lollipops and gumdrops, and...
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
The pink pony fanned herself with a rubber bat,
But
clearly
I'm
flustered.
recording.
Oh, right, but you couldn't...
Yeah, okay, I paused it. Yeah.
The Wi-Fi's messed up, so I'll have to.
I guess I'm gonna have to record. So yeah, as you heard my brother, the Wi-Fi's messed up, so I think I'm gonna have to record a part 2 of part 1. Yeah.